Okay, this is the third time that I'm recording this video. I know this does not matter at all, or should not matter to you guys at all. The reason I'm saying this is because if some of the ideas are choppy or come off as stupid, then that's the whole reason behind it. The thing with recording multiple times is I like to speak very naturally. Like a lot of my videos, I do have points written in my script, but I go through them and then I just look at them and then I speak or convey whatever I want to in my own words. So there's no real rehearsed script to it. And the problem with doing it multiple times is like the last time I recorded this video, I loved it. Like the whole flow of it, the way that my ideas came across were beautiful. So I hope that happens this video too. Again, a little bit random side note, but let's talk about niche, guys. So everybody tells you should niche down, you should sell to a particular person, or when you create content, you should try to speak to a particular audience and be very clear about it. But why do we really need to do this? That's always something that I've asked. And I have always thought to myself that, look, I want to be huge, whether it comes to content, whether it comes to business, all of it, I want to be the best at it. So why should I really go niche down when I can only sell or speak to a certain amount of people? Whereas my objective is in that, so why should I really start from there? So in this video, to help you guys understand how niche works and stuff, I've got two real concepts that I'm going to be talking to you about, and then they have sub points under them too. But basically, the whole idea of this video comes off of this book, or is inspired by this book called The Cold Start Problem by Andrew Chen. It's this guy who was part of like the strategy and development and growth team at Uber. He was a huge, a very high position and headed a lot of the growth. In fact, the only reason he left is because when the company sort of flatlined and then their objective is to just maintain and they didn't want to grow anymore. So that's when he left and he joined. I don't remember the VC's name, but this big American VC, and he's invested in a lot of the big companies that we know of today. And he's huge, and he beautifully cracks this whole idea of network effects and why you sort of need to niche down, and he gives it a beautiful name also, which I'll get into in a second. So if you guys do want to check out the book, go ahead and do that. It's called The Cold Start Problem by Andrew Chen, a beautiful read. So the first real, or the two real concepts that I'm going to get across in this video, are atomic networks and network effects. So let's start from the top. Network effects are basically businesses that have this sort of viral growth to them. So you can think about, things like ChatGPT, for example. ChatGPT is currently valued at a $500 billion valuation, right? That is massive for a company that was only started in like 2018 or something. No, wait, when? I don't know, but I know they've not been around for more than 20 years. So that's a huge, like exponential amount of growth for a company that has barely been like in the market for less than 20 years. Like, for example, you compare them to the FANG companies like Facebook, Amazon, Nvidia, Google and stuff. These guys have been around for a while, and after that they've been valued at like $1 trillion company and all of that. And even they have had like network effects in their growth and stuff. So basically, network effects are these companies that grow with like massive like speed and super fast growth, and they usually happen in technology stuff. It can happen in physical products too, but it's mostly in technology stuff. Now the reason why it happens most often in technology products is because network effects are, or businesses that have network effects in them, are businesses that have a communication between two parties. So for example, I'll take the example of Uber itself, right? Uber is a communication between a driver and a rider, right? At all points of time, the rider is looking to get a drive and the driver is looking to get a rider so that he can make some money. So if you think about it, there is this sort of viral element to it, because the more drivers you get onto the network, the more people will choose your application to book a ride, because that means they have like the more faster they can get a ride, and the more riders that join the application, the more drivers that will join, because the demand is higher. So they'll be like, okay, if I join this app, it's very easy for me to get like somebody to book my car for a ride, and that means more money for me. So that's the whole idea of network effects. It goes across in so many different technology products, like Netflix, for example, is a network effects. All of your social media applications are a network effects. So that's network effects. Now, in this book, he introduces the concept of like, he gives this term for niche basically. So the term that he uses is called atomic networks. So basically, it's this whole idea of, now, if you know you're supposed to sell to a network, right? Like if you know you're going to start selling to a driver and a rider, instead of going to the entire world and building an application, like let's say for the entirety of US, and you say that, yeah, okay, we're just going to go to the US market and build like, the app, like this Uber application for the entirety of US, that product probably would not have scaled. That's simply because you can imagine if they're going that broad, what's the point of getting a driver join, like let's say in India, for example, a driver joins the application in Delhi, and then I have like a lot of riders joining in Bangalore? That's no use, because how is the Delhi driver benefiting from like a lot of riders in Bangalore? So the whole idea of atomic network is basically you pick a specific, now it can be region, it can be like a college, which I'll get to. There are a lot of examples where people have picked colleges. You can pick a particular like gender, you can pick a particular caste or religion. I mean, caste not really does, I don't believe that should matter, but religion maybe, because I don't know, you could build an application for like the time people do namaz or something like that, right? Like that would help one religion, so that could help the communication between them. So it's this whole idea where you pick the specific audience that you're trying to solve the communication between of, and you try to go as specific as possible. A lot of times region is one of the biggest specificity that you can create. Like I mentioned, there are different things that you can also go into specifics. So if you really think about it, India is like the perfect place for this, because when you go into like a country that is so diverse, like we literally, it's so very different starting a business in India in comparison to a lot of countries in the world. Obviously not all countries, there are probably, I actually don't know, I don't know enough, but I don't think there are enough countries out there that are as diverse as India. I'll give a simple example. Like you look to start a business in the US, let's say it's a technology business, and you build an application for it and stuff, and you go to the market, you launch this product, and a lot of people start using it. The simplest thing, right, when you're building an application is language, right? I mean, you need certain words, you need people to understand these words and all of that. Now, in the US, if you're doing this, you just do it in English. And for the most part, in China, if you're doing this, I know I've lived in China, so you just do it in Chinese, or I mean Mandarin in most cases. Some, obviously there are a few dialect differences, but for the most part, everybody understands Mandarin, or at least the basics of Mandarin. But in India, if you were to do the same thing, what you do in a place like, I mean, any state pretty much, right? Like there's so much diversity. Maybe not like, I think generally people understand Hindi. I haven't been around in North India as much, so I don't know. But for the most part, I think from my overall idea, I think people can understand Hindi. But then when you come down south, it's so different. And again, in North also, there's Gujarati, there's like Bihari, Bhojpuri, all these different things. And it's really like so different. So if you really build a business with atomic networks in India, it's probably going to be crucial that you actually do it that way, because that way, like you can really speak to one particular audience, solve a problem for them, and you could really go into the specifics. Because if you go broad, then you're really just playing like a loser's game, because of how diverse everything really is in our country. This whole idea of network effects and then atomic networks is basically, if you can really visualize it as a funnel, right? So you've got network effects, which is this overarching idea that's really helpful for businesses and all of that, and viral growth. Now, in that, if you want to create network effects, you know that you need to create an atomic network, which is basically selling to a particular audience. Another point that I forgot to mention is atomic networks. Basically, when you go to a specific audience, you increase the likelihood of communication between them. So I did vaguely say this, where if Uber were to come to India, like they were to get on a lot of drivers in Delhi and then get on a lot of riders in Bangalore, it would not make any sense, because the communication between them is zero. So if you can create like a network where you go so specific and you're solving the communication between two parties, only in a specific region or a specific age category, and you solve that for them. And then you sort of broaden, but let's not go into the idea of broaden, but that's another really key point of atomic networks. The friction between the communication of these two parties should be very less. So in Uber's case, for example, if you do get on a lot of riders in Bangalore, you have to get on a lot of drivers in Bangalore itself. It does not make sense to go into Delhi. In fact, that's why, that's how Uber started in India, right? Even though they were huge and they reached all this scale, they only started in metropolitan cities like Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi. As far as I can think, I think maybe in Hyderabad or Tamil Nadu, or I mean Chennai or whatever. But they started out with these specific cities, and now even when they started out in the specific cities, Uber was not available everywhere. It is only in like the areas where urban areas, and there was a lot of movement and all of that. But now Uber, like I know for myself because I live in literally the middle of nowhere, and Uber comes to us in the matter of seconds. So they've sort of scaled into that, but that's a different topic. I'll get into that in a minute. But that's the whole idea: atomic networks, specificity, communication between two parties. Now, coming back to that visual funnel that I was drawing. So you have network effects, that's the overarching idea. You've got atomic networks, which is the next specific thing that narrows down that, okay, if I want to create a network effect business, I need to create an atomic network. And the next thing is, how do you really create an atomic network? Do you just like go, okay, I want to sell to this sort of these two parties of people? Do I just go and like get them on board like a hooligan, or is there some sort of process to that? So there is. So according to Andrew Chen, he beautifully puts this: every network has a hard side and an easy side. So for this whole thing, I'll give you the example of Tinder. Now, Tinder is a communication between men and women. So generally, if you think about it, in life, right, out of these two parties, one of them has it easier, right? Like women always have, when I say easier, I don't mean like, or like with like life in general. I'm not going to go into that topic. But when I say they have it easier, I mean like with communication with the opposite sex. Like for a woman, there are always 10 options of men, generally, at least. Whereas for a man, he has to shoot his shot and do all of that stuff for the most part, at least. So this same idea translates onto like a digital platform like Tinder, where you to get the women to stay on the platform, one is really hard because there's all sorts of creeps. There's like so many men spamming her. Like, why the fuck should I stay on this platform where if I just go outside, I have as many options, just as many options anyway, at least traditionally. Probably now things have changed a bit, but that's how it is for women, right? So how do you get them to stay on the platform, and how do you get like the algorithm to work in their favor, so that like if it's a woman that's getting a lot of matches and stuff, how do we make it not like the experience not too much of a spam for her? Or how do you sort of make things smooth for her where there's not too many creeps constantly DMing her or texting her on a private chat or doing creepy stuff like that? So the hard side of the network are the women. So once they figured out how to get the women on the platform and stay on the platform, that's when the men, like I said, would automatically come onto the platform. So it's the same thing for Uber. In Uber's case, like he says this in Andrew Chen, obviously he was part of the growth and development team of Uber. So he knows better than anybody what the hard side of the network probably was. In his case, in Uber's case, the hard side of the network were the drivers. Because the more drivers you have, that means the more people that use the application, and the more people that use the application, the more drivers you get. So if you really just solve the one part, which is the driver, and it's also harder to get on drivers in the application, to use the application and get customers, than actual riders. Like riders was not that challenging, is what they noticed from their data and their statistics and all of that. So they had all sorts of features for the hard side of network, right? Like you invite a friend and you get a huge bonus. Like in the US, it was up to $300 at one point, where you invite somebody to join the application as a driver and they get 300 fucking dollars. That's a lot of money. In rupees, that's around what? Around 25-ish thousand, 30,000, around that range, something around that range. But that's fucking insane. Like that's a lot of money, right? Like imagine you just invite somebody and you get like 30K. You're not doing anything. And a lot of cases, I think if I'm not wrong, they also get money, like the person that was invited. So it's a huge thing. And that was the whole offer structure that they had in place for the hard side of the network. So usually what he says is, if you're able to crack the hard side of the network, then the easier side of the network automatically grows as a ripple effect of it. Now, the beauty of atomic networks is, once you figure it out in one tiny atomic network. Like, for example, once you figure out how to grow or create a network effect in one particular region, you have all the incentives in place. You know how to crack the hard side, how to get them onto the network. You have increased the communication, you've made it frictionless, and both sides of the network are thriving off of each other. That's when you go into the next step, which is replicating your atomic networks. Now, this is the part where you start achieving scale. This is all in theory, in like it's coming off probably in like 5-10 minutes, like this whole idea. But obviously, to do this in the real world, it's a different ball game. Like it takes a lot of businesses multiple years to actually achieve atomic networks in one network itself. But once they do, then it's sort of like, repeat, like rinse and repeat the same idea with another, maybe another region, maybe another age group, and so on and so forth. So to explain this idea, I've got this story from which comes from the book again, and it was this bank in America. They're called Bank of America, if I'm not wrong. They're the first ones to introduce the credit card system into like anywhere in the world. It did not exist before that. Instant loans, sort of the system, and it was introduced in this particular state in the US where they had a population of about 250,000 people. And a huge part of that population used to use Bank of America as the service provider for banking. So they created this thing where they went into like every customer's house over there. Obviously, out of 250,000 people, like a lot of them use Bank of America. So they just went in their places and they just sent them free credit cards. Obviously, back then they didn't have credit score and all of that, but they just sent them all free credit cards, irrespective of any risk. And what that sort of did was they had so many people in this one city with credit cards. Now, that is the hard side of the network. So that's one thing that you can also realize, that the customers were probably the hard side of the network. So they gave them free, like no friction, just come on board. You get free money. Why not use it? And then you have to just pay it back eventually, obviously. But you get it instantly like that for all your needs. And then what they did next was they went to the merchants, which was like the other side of the network, the two parties. They went to them and they were like, hey, look, we've got all of these customers in your city with these things called credit cards. They can use them to buy anything that they want, and we lend them the money and they pay it back to us and all of that. And there are these many number of customers in your city that have this much amount of dollars in their cards. So that means their spending power is going to increase as a byproduct of it. You need to get this on. So they were like, dude, it's a no-brainer for us. We're getting money. The customer is going to be spending more because they have that sort of leverage to spend right now. So why not get on these banking credit card systems into our system? And they did. And the crazy part in that even is there's another network in that itself, where if one merchant gets on board, the other merchant has to get on board, because otherwise he's going to not make as much profit as this guy, because he has this competitive advantage. So that's a different thing. Let's not overcomplicate things. Basically, the idea is they went into this one atomic network, which is one region, one city. They completely got every customer on board over there and every merchant on board over there, and the system worked. People are exchanging money was flowing, merchants were getting money, the banks were sort of getting interest, and customers were getting money to pay at ease without any friction. So once they created that network over there, they replicated the same idea in a different city in the US itself, and then they did the same thing with different cities, and eventually they obviously conquered the entirety of US, and then obviously the idea of credit cards spread across the world. So that's really how scaling atomic networks happens. It happens in a lot of businesses. Like Facebook, for example, started with colleges only. They would go college by college. And even Tinder, if I'm not wrong, started that way. So the whole goal is to figure out one atomic network. So when they say niche down, the idea is you figure out your communication with this one particular audience. Once you crack that, you can then replicate it into a different region and maybe a different region. So this sort of helped me restructure my channel too, where initially my channel was just like broad ideas where everything I liked, right? So it's like self-development, it's business, it's psychology, it's design. Maybe I don't know if I've ever spoken about design, but I think workout is one of them, productivity, routines, and all of that. And that's a lot happening. And sure, maybe you can argue that I am the niche, and so that's why it's fair for all of that to happen because I'm interested in all of those things. But then I realized that I can grow the channel, and that there's no doubt about it. I mean, there's a lot of people that have done it, but if I'd much rather focus on one atomic network and with the best that I can, right? So in my case, it's like Bangalore is an atomic network for me. Business is an atomic network for me. Those two things right now are probably the biggest atomic network leverages that I have right now. So I'm going to use them and sort of grow things from there. So the whole idea of atomic networks really is something that's a game changer for me. When I read this book, I immediately recommended it to a lot of my friends, and I was like, dude, this is a must read. Like, this is, I mean, it's so simple, the idea that it should be common sense really, but it makes so much logic to all of the deeper ideas that people speak about when it comes to business and marketing and all of that. In Bangalore, I think a lot of businesses do this so beautifully. Like if you look at the simplest of thing, like charts, for example, like you have these Bangar paid chart stalls that they move around. Like before, I used to always wonder, like, why are you confining yourself just to Bangarpet? I mean, you can do like Maharashtra chart, you can do like Gujarati chart. I don't know all the charts in the world, but there's so many different options. Why are you confining yourself? But then they are solving a niche problem for a particular audience. Tomorrow, when I need like Bangarpet chart, it's a no-brainer for me where I'm gonna go. There's in fact this guy who we've always gone to for masal puri, who I mean it's and like it's a eyes closed thing. Like we don't even have to think about it. Whereas it's not often that I have the idea that I want to have charts and I don't know what chart I want to have. I'll go there and decide. For that, maybe I might need versatility. But for the most part, if I know I want to have Bangar Pay chart, I know exactly where to go to. I know the service that they will deliver, and that's about it. So I think in Bangalore, we can really see a lot of instances of this, and I've become more self-aware of it. And at the same time, I'm trying to learn as much as I can. But really, a game changer of an idea of this whole thing where you niche down first, really figure out one particular audience that you're trying to solve a problem for. And if it's a business, then when I say one particular audience, I mean like marketing, like when you create content, you're trying to solve a problem. Like the communication is between me and the viewer, which is you. So that's my real atomic network over there. And in business, obviously, you're trying to solve a problem between two different parties, or maybe even like a service that you have and an audience. That could also be like an atomic net. I mean, that could also be a network effect sort of thing. So that's the whole idea, guys, of atomic networks. I would highly recommend you read this book. Like, there's all sorts of different ideas. It's very Silicon Valley esque. So it's a lot of tech stuff, like a lot of tech startup stuff. So if you're into like physical products and stuff, it could be really good read anyways, just to know how marketing and stuff works. And if you want to really deep dive into how tech like businesses scale in the valley and stuff, then this is a really good book for you. I would highly, 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 highly recommend it. Anybody out there? And yeah, um, the cold start problem by Andrew Chen. That's about it for this video, guys. I hope you guys gain some value of it out of it. It's 6 months so far, and since I last uploaded my last video, and we're back at it now. Like I said, third time recording this video. So my next two videos, the background's probably a little bit more messed up because those videos somehow were safe, and the videos keep getting deleted for some reason. Like either the audio gets deleted or the videos get deleted. It's some stupid fuck up on my part itself, which I need to develop systems for. But the next two videos, funnily enough, the background's probably going to be worse, but now it's sort of better. So eventually things are going to get better. I do have a lot of things planned. Again, like I said, atomic networks is one of them, and then also with like the whole structure of content and even the volume of it may be something that I've been thinking about, which I'll speak about in another video. But if you did gain some value from it, then please share this to whoever you think could use this. And if you have any feedback, then go ahead and leave it down. I mean, things that I could improve in my communication or in my structure of the videos and all of that, that would be really helpful. So thanks, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. And until next time, bye.